Max is too slow, get him out of the way.
This is silly, Seb, come on.
Well, I think obviously the decision in a way was a bit of a shock, also for myself, but it is what it is at the moment.
Formula One as a sport is full of legendary stories about greatness and resilience. But Formula One as a business, that's something else entirely. A twisted world of drama, betrayal, and ruthless decisions.
Max, let Checo through, please.
Thank you for that, guys. Thank you.
I'm sorry about that, Checo.
Yeah, it shows who he really is.
Dark stories that can no longer stay hidden, not in this media-saturated era of motorsport. In F1, empires are built over the carcasses of fallen careers. Red Bull entered the pinnacle of motorsport 20 years ago, as a gamble, as a rebellious team that came to shake things up.
Tremendously proud to carry the Red Bull logo. It's become iconic in Formula One.
They were bold, loud, and didn't care about budgets. They quickly matched the spending power of Ferrari and Mercedes. That gave them a dangerous illusion that they could do whatever they wanted, whenever, and however they pleased.
It feels terrible.
Today, Red Bull is one of just two teams that have dominated the sport over the last 15 years. It only took them 5 seasons to reach the top, thanks to cutting-edge engineering, brilliant drivers, and a cold, calculated, and merciless approach.
Is Max doing the same?
Max's last lap, 32.6.
I mean, so why you tell me 33.0?
The Red Bull we see today is fun, confident, celebrating 8 drivers' titles and 6 constructors' championships. But behind the scenes lies a trail of broken souls, drivers who never recovered, who lost the joy of racing, and who walked away for the sake of their mental health.
We may have a bit of a problem. Got damage.
Red Bull doesn't do nostalgia. The only constant is their hunger for titles and profit. Today we're diving into the other side of this dynasty, the side you don't see on the podium, the side they don't record in the official stats. Today you'll meet the true victims of Red Bull. Success is never an accident. Behind every dynasty, there are names and power moves. Red Bull Racing's story began in the early 2000s, when Helmut Marko, cunning, controversial, and unfiltered, convinced Dietrich Mateschitz, the founder of Red Bull and a speed junkie, to go beyond sponsoring teams and dive headfirst into Formula One. Having a Red Bull logo on a car wasn't enough. Mateschitz needed to own a team, control his fate. To avoid the red tape of creating a brand new entry, the plan was to buy a struggling team already in the paddock. But Marko wasn't thinking small. He suggested buying 2. So in 2004, Red Bull acquired Jaguar Racing and built Red Bull Racing on its ashes. A year later, they bought Minardi and renamed it Toro Rosso, a feeder team meant to shape young talents from a brand new academy. An academy that was also Marko's idea, the Red Bull Junior Team, a brutal talent mill where he would serve as director, judge, and executioner. Marko wasn't just building a structure, he was securing a throne. But Mateschitz, trying to keep things balanced, made a decision that would define the future. He appointed a young, ambitious, 31-year-old named Christian Horner as team principal, the youngest in modern F1 history. Power was now split. Horner would run the daily show. Marko, operating from the shadows, would decide the fate of the drivers, both equal in the eyes of Mateschitz. But without a clear hierarchy, the door was left wide open for Marko's personal agenda. His loyalty, not to the team, but to himself. The Red Bull Empire was officially born, but so was the seed of future chaos. A chaos that would devour careers, destroy friendships, and turn glory into a bloodbath. Every year in Formula One, the so-called silly season begins, when teams move their chess pieces, negotiate in secret, and rebuild their lineups for the coming year. It's part of the game, but what's not part of the game are mid-season changes. Those don't happen by design. They happen when something's broken. In modern F1 history, only a handful of teams have resorted to such drastic measures. And no one has done it more often, or more ruthlessly, than Red Bull. They've turned mid-season replacements and surprise sackings into a recurring habit. Some drivers were axed before they even had a chance to adapt. Others were demoted with no warning, just as they were trying to find their rhythm. No time, no patience, no mercy. Because at Red Bull, if you don't fit the standard, you're disposable. And today, we're going to relive, one by one, the human cost of that brutality. Vitantonio Liuzzi, Red Bull, 2005, 4 races. Toro Rosso, 2006 to 2007. When Red Bull joined Formula One in 2005, they were just a wild card. The new kids trying to break into a world ruled by legends. And in that chaos, Vitantonio Liuzzi was one of the first to fall. Liuzzi, a product of the junior formulas, had proven himself fast and aggressive, a hot prospect when he signed as Red Bull's reserve driver. What he didn't know was that he was walking into a game no one had warned him about. Christian Klein, the main driver, was ordered to give up his seat for 4 races so the team could quietly test whether Liuzzi was the one.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Imola, to my home country here in Italy, my first race, and try to follow me and welcome in paradise.
But Liuzzi, with barely enough time to settle in, did what he could. He showed flashes of speed, but standing out in a chaotic, disorganised team was nearly impossible. By 2006, Red Bull sent him to their new junior team, Toro Rosso. The narrative was clear: build young talent, focus on the future. But the reality was darker. To Helmut Marko, Liuzzi was just a placeholder, a bench warmer, a name to fill the seat, until Red Bull's academy started producing its own golden boys. And when those fresh talents came knocking, Liuzzi was out. No fanfare, no thank you. He had to seek refuge elsewhere, eventually landing at Force India, far from the empire he had helped shape. And that forgot him just as easily. Vitantonio Liuzzi was the first warning. If you weren't part of Marko's personal project, you were just passing through. Christian Klein, Red Bull 2005, 15 races, 2006, 15 races. Christian Klein was one of Red Bull's first full-time drivers. Young, fast, full of promise. A carryover from the old Jaguar days.
They were here to win, and you could see that, from year to year improving. And, seeing all the 20 cars here today, you just have to pinch yourself that you've been part of this, great success that Red Bull Racing had in all these years.
He could have had a solid career, but from the beginning, the odds were stacked against him. Halfway through the season, without notice, the team forced him to give up his seat for 4 races, so they could test Liuzzi. A harsh, unnecessary experiment that would derail any driver trying to build momentum. When Klein returned, he wasn't the same. Yes, Red Bull renewed his contract for 2006, but not because they believed in him. He was now just the backup to David Coulthard, the experienced Brit leading the project on track. The message was loud and clear. Klein wasn't the future. He was a tool of convenience. And Marko, as impatient as ever, he didn't even wait for the season to end. With 3 races left in the year, Klein was fired. Just like that, he was left wondering if he'd ever truly been part of the team. To Red Bull, he had been a miscalculation. Disillusioned, Klein tried to stay in Formula 1, but his only shot came as a test driver for Honda Racing. He never got another real opportunity. Klein learned the hard way. At Red Bull, loyalty only flows one way, and it's not toward the ones wearing their colours. Robert Dornbos, Red Bull 2006, 3 races. Scott Speed, Toro Rosso 2006 to 2007, 10 races. Robert Dornbos arrived at Red Bull from Minardi, the team that would soon be reborn as Toro Rosso. In 2006, after Christian Klein was sacked, Red Bull needed someone to fill the seat for the last 3 races. Not to build for the future, just to fill the seat. Dornbos was that guy. He raced those 3 Grand Prix with dignity, did his job, kept it clean. And once the season ended, no contract, no development program, not even a real test role. They simply erased him. With no options left in F1, Dornbos looked for refuge in the American CART series, trying to salvage a career that Red Bull never gave him a chance to build. Meanwhile, over at Toro Rosso, the so-called driver factory, the pressure cooker was heating up. Scott Speed, the first American F1 driver in years, raced for Toro Rosso in 2006 and part of 2007. But by his second season, the writing was already on the wall. The environment was toxic. Speed didn't hold back. He told the media, "It's obvious that Tonio and I get next to no support from the bosses. You don't need to be a genius to read the press and figure out they're trying everything to get rid of us." In any other team, that might have triggered an internal review. At Red Bull, or more specifically under Helmut Marko, it was a death sentence. Speed was axed immediately after just 10 races in 2007. No second chances. He was shown the door and had to find a new home in other racing categories. In his place, Red Bull promoted their newest golden boy from the junior team, a young German with blazing speed and ruthless focus, Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Bourdais, Toro Rosso 2008, 2009, 9 races. Jaime Alguersuari, Toro Rosso 2009, 8 races. 2010, 2011. For many young drivers, Toro Rosso looked like a launch pad, a shortcut to Formula 1 glory. But for others, it was just the first step toward being forgotten. Sebastian Bourdais, multiple car champion in the US, was one of them. He joined Toro Rosso in 2008 alongside Sebastian Buemi, bringing experience and pedigree. But the season was a mess. The car was unstable, and as was common throughout the Red Bull family, reliability was more of a threat than a strength. Despite the chaos, Bourdais was renewed for 2009, but in Red Bull and Toro Rosso, words mean very little when patience runs out. After just 9 races that season, Bourdais was sacked. The official excuse, underperformance. Bourdais returned to America and found shelter again in IndyCar. His replacement at Toro Rosso was another young talent, Jaime Alguersuari. At just 19 years old, Alguersuari became the youngest F1 debutant in history at the time. He finished the 2009 season and stayed on for 2 more years, showing flashes of speed and maturity. But under constant pressure and increasingly tense clashes with Helmut Marko, the writing was on the wall.
Not every single lap. It has 2 attempts. We don't know where in the middle of the sector if we are quick or not quick or not. No. It wasn't 5 times. It was 1 liter in the first corner of his first lap. Then he slowed down, and the next 2 laps you were always in his way. But obviously in the way. No, that's not acceptable. The front is totally designed. And we don't accept that.
At the end of 2011, with no warning, Toro Rosso didn't renew his contract. Just like that, at age 21, Jaime Alguersuari was out of Formula 1. His main career had ended before it truly began. He moved on to Formula E, looking for a racing world that wasn't ruled by Red Bull's impossible standards. The stories of Bourdais and Alguersuari made one thing painfully clear. At Toro Rosso, patience is a myth, and the future, a promise that rarely survives the season. Sebastian Buemi, Toro Rosso 2009 to 2011. At Toro Rosso, sometimes being fast isn't enough, nor is being consistent. Not even patience is rewarded. Sebastian Buemi learned that the hard way. The Swiss driver arrived in 2009, one of the Red Bull Junior team's most promising graduates, and over the course of 3 full seasons, he delivered. He fought in the midfield. He adapted to the endless chaos of a team that never quite felt complete. But above all, he waited. He waited for promotion. He waited for a seat at Red Bull Racing. He waited for Helmut Marko to back him. But that moment never came. While others were being fast-tracked, often with half his performance, Buemi kept grinding in a Toro Rosso that simply couldn't showcase his true potential. In Red Bull's system, time is not your ally. Time is your enemy. And in a setup where every season's a make or break, Buemi simply got old. Old by the standards of an academy already obsessed with the next shiny project. At the end of 2011, with no real offer to move up, no promises fulfilled, Buemi got the message. He left. He found justice elsewhere, becoming a champion in Formula E and later a respected force in endurance racing. Sebastian Buemi didn't leave Toro Rosso because he lacked talent. He left because there was no room left. Because in Red Bull's world, talent without Marko's blessing doesn't exist. Jean-Éric Vergne, Toro Rosso, 2012, 2013, 2014. If there's one thing Red Bull's history makes painfully clear, it's that patience is reserved for a chosen few, and gratitude for almost no one. Jean-Éric Vergne was yet another silent casualty of that ruthless system. The young Frenchman debuted with Toro Rosso in 2012, burdened with the pressure of being the next big Red Bull Academy product. Across 3 full seasons, 2012, 2013, and 2014, Vergne showed real progress. He scored points consistently. He climbed the driver standings each year, but always stuck in the midfield, always battling with a car that barely allowed him to dream. And while other drivers were promoted to Red Bull Racing with far less experience, Vergne watched his opportunity never come. He waited, he worked, he proved himself. But at Red Bull, merit has an expiration date. After 3 seasons of quiet service, no promotion, no real support, Vergne saw the writing on the wall. Red Bull had moved on. Their focus was already on fresher faces, younger, more malleable. Vergne wasn't brutally fired. He wasn't dropped mid-season. He was just ignored. And sometimes, indifference is the cruelest way to say goodbye. He left for endurance racing and Formula E, where he was finally allowed to shine. There, he became a 2-time Formula E champion, proving that the problem was never his talent. The problem was a system that refused to see it. Mark Webber, Red Bull Racing 2007 to 2013. Daniel Ricciardo, Toro Rosso 2012 to 2013. Red Bull 2014 to 2018. AlphaTauri 2023 to 2024, 18 races. While Toro Rosso was casually feeding young talents to the wolves, things weren't much better at the top. At Red Bull Racing, the main team, the story had the same cruel undertones. Mark Webber, one of the foundational pillars of Red Bull's early success, joined in 2007. Strong, consistent, a fighter. But everything changed when Sebastian Vettel arrived in 2009. Suddenly, Red Bull's supposedly neutral structure began revolving around one man. Vettel wasn't just fast, he was Marko's personal project, the Red Bull Junior team's poster boy, brought to life. And Webber, despite his victories, his wheel-to-wheel grit, his loyalty, he was pushed aside. occupied. The closest he got was third in the drivers' standings, while Vettel took home 3 consecutive world titles during Webber's stint. He never got to sit on the throne, and the treatment never equal. Tired of fighting his own team, Mark Webber left in 2013. His exit was classy, his legacy respected, but the frustration lingered.
2021 then.
Webber had become a victim of the very system he helped build, and sadly, he wouldn't be the last. His replacement, fellow Aussie Daniel Ricciardo, came in fresh, charismatic, and loaded with talent. In 2014, he outperformed Vettel on track, prompting the German to jump ship and head to Ferrari. It seemed like a new chapter had begun, but just 2 years later, another shadow emerged, Max Verstappen, the Dutch prodigy, the new chosen one. Verstappen instantly became the centre of Red Bull's universe, and Ricciardo, despite his wins, overtakes, and ever-present grin, was shoved into the same corner Webber once occupied. Searching for a team where he could lead, Ricciardo left for Renault, then McLaren. But fate wasn't kind, nothing worked. His 2023 return to the junior team, now rebranded as AlphaTauri, was marketed as a redemption arc, but that opportunity never really existed. In 2024, after a string of underwhelming results, Ricciardo was dropped before the season even ended, replaced by Nick de Vries, the same Ricciardo who once beat world champions, who once dreamed of being the face of Red Bull, now reduced to a stopgap. An awkward footnote, because at Red Bull, talent only matters if it fits the story they want to tell. Daniel Kvyat, Toro Rosso, 2014, Red Bull 2015 to 2016 4 races, Toro Rosso 2016-17 races, 2017, 2019, 2020. At Red Bull, getting promoted isn't always a reward. Sometimes it's just a better disguised trap. Daniil Kvyat was one of the Red Bull junior team's top products. Fast, talented, obedient, everything a young driver was supposed to be. He debuted with Toro Rosso in 2014, a decent rookie season, all about adaptation. But when Vettel left for Ferrari the following year, Helmut Marko needed a replacement, and he needed it fast. So in 2015, Kvyat was promoted to Red Bull Racing, even if he hadn't been fully seasoned yet. He was young, maybe too young, but he delivered. In his first season, he finished 7th in the Drivers' Championship, even outscoring his more experienced teammate Daniel Ricciardo. In any other team, that would have been headline worthy. At Red Bull, it meant nothing. Just 4 races into the 2016 season, after an incident at the Russian Grand Prix, Helmut Marko saw an opening, not to fix anything, but to replace. Kvyat was instantly demoted from Red Bull Racing back to Toro Rosso, all to make space for Red Bull's newest golden boy, Max Verstappen. It was a public humiliation.
It is what it is at the moment, and I think I always been giving my answers on the track.
Well, I think that's not up to me to say who deserved it or not. I'm happy with the chance they've given to me, and I will try to make the best of it, and we'll see where it ends up.
Kvyat swallowed it and returned to Toro Rosso. He kept driving, kept working, but his confidence was shattered. He hung on for a few more years, even as Toro Rosso rebranded into AlphaTauri, but there was no real support, no path back to the top. Worn out, he left Formula One for good at the end of 2020. His career now stands as one of the most brutal examples of what it means to be disposable in the Red Bull machine. Carlos Sainz, Toro Rosso, 2015, 2016, 2017, 16 races. Not every Red Bull driver waited for the guillotine to drop. Some, smart, brave, and self-aware, saved themselves before it was too late. Carlos Sainz Jr. was one of them. A product of the Red Bull Junior team, Sainz made his F1 debut with Toro Rosso in 2015, sharing the garage with another young protege, Max Verstappen. For over 2 seasons, from 2015 through mid-2017, Sainz showed everything you'd expect from a future world champion: speed, maturity, consistency. But he also showed something rare among his peers: vision. Sainz looked around. He saw talented drivers promoted or discarded at Marko's whim. He realised that success at Red Bull wasn't just about performance, it was about favouritism, politics, and unsettling silences. And he understood one key truth: his future wasn't secure. So, before he could be trapped, Sainz made the smartest move of his career. He negotiated his exit from Toro Rosso before the 2017 season ended. And more than that, he finished the final 4 races of the year, already driving for Renault. He didn't wait to be demoted, he didn't wait to be forgotten. He saved himself. And ever since, Carlos Sainz has become a key figure wherever he's gone. Pierre Gasly, Toro Rosso 2017, 5 races, 2018, Red Bull 2019, 12 races, Toro Rosso, 9 races, AlphaTauri 2020 to 2022, Alexander Albon, Toro Rosso 2019, 12 races, Red Bull 2020. The Red Bull system once seemed unstoppable, but after years of chewing through young drivers, Helmut Marko faced a harsh reality. He had run out of ready-made talent. In 2017, desperate to fill seats, Marko had to take a gamble on someone still very raw, Pierre Gasly. With just 5 Grands Prix under his belt, the Frenchman was thrown into Toro Rosso to gain experience. He got a full season in 2018, but it wasn't enough time to truly grow. Still, that didn't stop Red Bull. In 2019, Gasly was promoted prematurely to Red Bull Racing. The pressure was suffocating. The comparisons to Max Verstappen, brutal. And after just 12 races, with no real support or patience, Gasly was sent back down to Toro Rosso. He stayed in the Red Bull orbit for 3 more seasons, showing maturity, even winning a race with AlphaTauri. But he knew the ceiling was already there. In 2023, he made his move to Alpine, choosing growth over stagnation. In his place, Red Bull called up another academy pick, Alexander Albon. He hadn't even finished a full rookie season. The whole thing reeked of desperation. Albon brought some freshness in the early months, but he wasn't the perfectly engineered Red Bull product they needed. Marco gave him a season and a half, from mid-2019 to the end of 2020. But the results never came. Albon left to rebuild his career at Williams, where he's finally being seen for the talent he always had. And Red Bull, for the first time in its modern history, they were forced to look outside their own system to save their championship ambitions. Sergio Checo Perez, Red Bull, 2021 to 2024. In 2021, after years of relying solely on its own talent factory, Red Bull hit a wall. There were no more ready names, no more sure bets. And reluctantly, Helmut Marko had to face an uncomfortable truth. They needed outside help. Enter Sergio Checo Perez, an experienced driver, forged in other teams, untouched by the Red Bull system. His arrival was more than just a signing. It was living proof that the Red Bull Junior team and AlphaTauri had failed their mission. Checo was everything Marko didn't want to admit, evidence that the Red Bull machine was no longer self-sufficient. For 4 seasons, Perez did exactly what was asked of him. He helped Red Bull win drivers and constructors titles. He played his role perfectly: Verstappen's wingman, points collector, victory protector, the Minister of Defence, a warrior, a legend.
Oh, Checo is a legend. Absolute animal.
But at Red Bull, gratitude has an expiration date. By the end of 2024, with new academy prospects ready and AlphaTauri once again serving as the pipeline, Marko reverted to his instinct: destabilise, then replace. The operation's name? Liam Lawson, a guided missile aimed straight at Checo. Every Checo mistake was magnified, every flaw weaponised, every success ignored, and Marko wasn't alone. Jos Verstappen, Max's father, joined the public pressure campaign. The environment became toxic. Checo Perez, fed up with the disrespect, the double standards, and being treated like a disposable asset, walked away. He left Red Bull in an unusual fashion, without a guaranteed seat for 2025. A quiet exit, but one full of meaning, because Checo didn't just leave. He proved that even if you deliver at Red Bull, there's no such thing as safety, only momentary glory, and guaranteed isolation once they're done with you. Nyck de Vries, AlphaTauri, 2023, 10 races. Nyck de Vries joined AlphaTauri in 2023. His signing was pitched as a smart bet, a Formula E world champion with maturity and racecraft. He replaced Ricciardo, but the honeymoon barely lasted half a season. Every mistake, every lack of adaptation, it all became fuel for Helmut Marko's fire. And once Marko ran out of patience, as always, there were no explanations, no second chances, no ceremony. De Vries was dropped mid-season in 2023, replaced by Liam Lawson. He became just another name on Red Bull's long list of discarded drivers. Talents who never got time, never got real support, never got a proper development plan. Because at Red Bull and its satellite teams, impatience is the only permanent policy. The end game. For Red Bull, every discarded driver was just collateral damage, an acceptable cost for continued dominance. But every empire that disregards its own parts eventually starts to destroy itself. And now, the story looks ready to repeat. Yuki Tsunoda, after 4 seasons at AlphaTauri, is finally getting a shot at Red Bull Racing, a chance that comes late. After watching many others leapfrog him, and he may very well be the next victim, another talent chewed up and cast aside. But this time the threat isn't just to the driver, because while Red Bull sticks to its playbook of discard and replace, the cracks at the top are starting to widen. The team, that once operated like a precision machine, is now suffering from internal warfare. Power struggles between Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, and Red Bull's new corporate leadership. Crossed agendas, broken trust, and a system that once crushed drivers is now crushing its own leadership. It's not just Horner under fire anymore. Red Bull itself faces a real risk of collapsing from within. What started as a bold, rebellious dream in Formula One may now end in scandals, betrayals, and downfall. Red Bull may seem to fly with wings, but in reality it stands atop a mountain of broken careers. And now the weight of that mountain threatens to bury them all.